Hi, welcome to Worldwide Culinary Apprentice. I'm Chef Lisa LaCourte, and today I'm here to talk to you about selecting the right knife for your task at hand. You don't always make the right choice, and what we want to do is maintain the integrity of our food while we're going through our prep work and to our final stage of cooking. So the first knife I want to discuss is the 3.5-inch paring knife that you're going to see reoccur throughout all of the demos because it's a very versatile knife, and I'm going to need to keep going back to it to do some finer detailed work. Right now I want to show you how to deal with a strawberry. It's strawberry season in our area, and the berries are beautiful right now, so I picked up some for today. I'm going to take the tip of my knife and hold it up very high to remove as little of the tip of the strawberry as possible, because as you'll see, it's going to help with the plating of the strawberry. I'm going to keep my finger up here, keep the berry secure. Drag the tip of the knife straight back, keeping this edge of the strawberry intact for fanning purposes. There you go, strawberry. The next knife I want to talk about is the 4.5-inch utility knife. You could use this knife for the strawberries as well. The strawberries are a little soft today, so you could easily use a thinner blade than the parer and have a great result. But right now, let's do some basil chiffonade. Basil from my garden, washed already. And remember, with your herbs, you want to wash and dry them before cutting into them. If you cut into a wet herb, you will just smash the cell walls and your herb will turn black before you can use it. Basil in particular needs to be used immediately after cutting. So remember, chiffonade is lightly rolled and flat on my board, and I'm going to once again utilize the tip and drag backwards. When I cut herbs, I tend to use this cut instead of the traditional chef's knife rolling. This particular method tends to damage the herbs less. And once again, we're maintaining integrity here of our ingredients. So here's our basil chiffonade with our utility knife. I'm going to put that right next to my strawberry here. Also with this knife, we can work with a shallot. You guys all know shallots, I'm sure. First thing I do, right, is I take this dirty, rotten root off of my shallot. Make sure you get all the dirt, because the dirt doesn't belong in the dish. Cut my tip, and I can feel inside here that there's actually 2 bulbs. Separate them like this. Now with this knife, it has a nice sharp tip, so I can get in between the layers of the shallot and peel back. And the cut we're going to utilize the shallot with is going to be a cisellet. So the next stage is to cut my shallot in half, just to make it a little bit more easier for me to handle. There's a little bit that I want to trim there that I don't like. It's a little dry. And now I take the tip of my knife. Here's the bulb of my shallot, the root end, and I follow the growth of my shallot straight down, also following the curve around. Then I make my cut this way, straight back, holding it together, pushing back, and now my last cut. Cisellet, finely diced. Next, we're going to deal with our tomato. And we're going to move on to our 6-inch utility knife. Same as the last knife, just bigger. Same shape, the blades are the same pointed tip, same kind of grip. I'm going to cut this tomato in half this way. Wow, that is a beautiful, beautiful knife. Wow. Nice thin cuts, almost like a tomato carpaccio. Dragging the tip straight back. Now with a tomato, sometimes you can get really squishy tomatoes that are kind of mealy on the inside. Serrated knife might be better for this if this knife maybe isn't as sharp as you need it to be. In this case, that's not a problem for us. Beautiful tomato. Tomato season here as well. And that's our 6-inch utility. I'm going to show you also, let's do some chives with that. Once again, these chives have already been washed and dried. And one of the things I like to do with chives, normally they come very long, right? So wash them and trim them down. These came partially trimmed from the market today, but I'm going to cut them in half this way. And then now that I have a straight edge, all my cuts will be the same. So I like my chives nice and thin. And in this case, I'm not dragging my tip back. I'm just rolling my blade on the board. So I'm allowing all of the flavor to come out. And all the cuts are the same. Also, you see what I'm doing? I'm scraping the board. Try not to scrape too deeply into your board because you will start picking up little pieces of plastic. Be very careful. You might want to use a pastry scraper when you're working in larger batches. Now we're going to work with our carrots and 3 separate tools. We have our peeler, of course, and we're going to move on to our 8-inch cook's knife or chef's knife and utilize our parer once again. So first you wash, of course, and then we're going to peel. So this is a very versatile peeler. It's a straight edge, peel straight back. Make sure you're over your bowl. Okay, and then the trimmings that come along with this on the ends. You have the root end here. And then I like to trim this little bit at the end. Sometimes they're cracked and damaged. Okay, so parer. To pare, we're going to pare down our carrot to the point where we want to make a julienne. So julienne is 7 centimeters long. It's about that long. And I'll try and get another one out of this end here. It's kind of small. Make sure they're the same. Okay, and we're going to use the cook's knife to square off. Tip down first, then the back end down. Now I have a flat surface. Remember, carrots grow tapered, so if my knife is here in the front, it's going to be here in the back. Tip down, back down, straight. Okay, and a wise old chef once taught me, don't cut that last side because you're going to need it in the end when you're pushing your carrot. I wonder who that was. Chef Roger. Okay, so now I'm going to make my planks. Remember, juliennes are nice and thin. Try and keep them even. I'm looking straight down on top of my knife. And now I can make my julienne. I hold my knife, my thumb here, my index finger wrapped over the top, lots of support. And then we just start to roll. There you go, carrot julienne with our cook's knife, our paring knife, and our peeler. Okay, the next knife we're going to take a look at is our first of the two serrateds, our bread knife. And I have a nice baguette here, just to show you how we can cut bread. On the bias or not on the bias, it depends on what you're doing. I always save the heel for myself. Okay, so you can cut as such. Remember, this blade is very sharp, just as sharp as a regular knife. You can cut on the bias this way if you're doing a lot of work and need to move faster. You can cut this way. So keeping the bread on its side, you can get a better handle on it and have more consistent cuts. I like cutting this way better. So there's our baguette. Now this knife has more purpose than just to cut bread. We're going to cut into our tomato as well. So remember I was saying how sometimes your knife needs to be sharpened and you just don't have the time. In this case, you can use a serrated knife for a tomato. It makes beautiful cuts, nice and thin, and it doesn't damage the tomato at all. Here we go. Just as beautiful as these last cuts. And finally, with this knife, I'm going to break down a cantaloupe. So remember, always wash your fruit, even though you're not going to eat the peel. These guys grow in the ground and they can carry E. coli, so please make sure you wash these. If you don't, you're just dragging all that dirt right through your fruit. So similar to the method of pelea vif, we're going to cut off the top and the bottom of the cantaloupe. Pelea vif is a technique we use a lot with lemons, citrus, things like that, to remove the outside but maintain the inner flesh without the peel attached. In this case, top and bottom, and then we can work from a nice flat surface. Okay, so we're going to take this knife and follow the curve of the cantaloupe around the outside. Now, when I go to make this next cut, I can see where the rind ends and the fruit begins. So I place my knife right at the right angle so I don't have to go back and catch anything I missed. And I'm going to cut this last one a little bit thicker so I can show you something very quickly with maybe the carving knife, just so that you can see how thin these blades can cut. Okay, so if you're working with prosciutto and melon, you can see here, you can almost get it so that you can see through the melon. Okay, and at this point, you can just cut this in half, take out your seeds, and then use different kinds of knives to get different shapes. You can cut it super thin, you can cut them into chunks if you're making a fruit salad. Of course, you have to scoop out the center. Okay, so I have a little bit of green I'll remove. And then, like I said, you can cut straight back, make thin slices. You can cut into chunks for fruit salad. Okay, the next serrated knife we have is the smaller one. It's the sausage knife. And I have a dry cured Italian salami here. Okay, so I'm going to remove this piece just for presentation purposes. Once again, you can slice straight down, or you can slice on the bias, whatever your presentation needs are. This is a very nice knife. Very nice slices. Nice and thin, very consistent. So we're moving on to our kitchen shears, very versatile tool in the kit. I love working with shears. Some people look down on them saying, oh, it's not a knife, but I love them. There's two blades, comes apart for easy cleaning. Probably dishwasher safe, but I'm not sure about that. But right now I'm going to show you an old trick that one of my friends told me about and his grandmother taught him. Shot glass, some fresh herbs. If you don't have a really sharp knife to use and you need to get your herbs chopped in a pinch, if you're camping and you only have scissors, into a shot glass, some mixed herbs. I have some basil and sage here. And then you take your shears and don't overfill your cup. This works great. All right, if I want just a rough chop, an haché, there we go, all done. Put them on my pasta at the last second. They smell good. Beautiful. Thanks for that trick. Okay, now we're going to move into working with our carving knife in a different way than it was probably intended. We're going to use it as a fillet knife. It has a really long, thin blade. Not as flexible as some fillet knives. I can bend it on the cutting board, but it's not the kind that you would see really bending. Okay, so today we have a mackerel. I'm going to use this for my discard. Mackerel, oily fish, no scales. It looks like the fins have already been removed at the market. We have the collar here. Gills are already gone, it looks like, and the head's still on. So what we'll do, I'm going to take the head off for you so you can actually see both sides of the fillets. We're going to cut in a curving way around the collar. So like with much butchering, you're going to let the item you're butchering dictate which angles you cut at. So like if you're butchering meat, you're going to stay as close to the bone as possible. Same thing with fish butchering, but you have to know a little bit about the anatomy in a fish. You can't just hack into it. It's very delicate, especially mackerel. It's very oily. So here, there's just some skin here. Here's your collar. And back here is the beginning of the fillet. Okay, not straight over here. You have to follow the curve. Okay, so I'm just going to cut through here, just that dead skin, and right up toward the back here. I'm going to roll the fish, and I'm going to follow that curve right around this way. And because the mackerel is kind of a soft boned fish, it should be easy to cut through the spine. So I take, with my fingers, I pull back on the collar. My cut is all the way to the back of the head, and with the thicker part of the knife here, cut right through the bone. Okay, and now I can see the inside of my fillet. Right here, that's the spine. Hear it? And then here's one fillet, and here's the other fillet here. Make sure to utilize any trimmings you can. In the mackerel's case, there's not much you can do because it's so oily. Okay, so in this case, here's my spine. Okay, I'm touching it right here. If I look here, here's the fin line. Okay, I'm going to support my flesh with my whole hand, not a finger pressing into my flesh. My fish is nice and cold. It's been in the refrigerator until this moment. Okay, I have to change the way my body is to address the fish. Okay, so here's my spine. And I'm going to use the very tip of the knife. Make sure I'm right on the bone. Now with the mackerel skin, you have to be careful because it can be a little tough to get through. Don't make that first cut really deep. If you make a mistake, you cannot correct it if you've gone too deep. So I'm gently making my first cut. I get down to the tail. Here's where my fillet will end. Okay, so let's go back. I'm on the bone. I can feel the bone. Click, 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 click. My tip is running right across the bones. Okay, and I'm gently going to open this up so you can see where I'm at here. Okay, right on the bone. Hear it? Click, click, click. Okay, and at this point I can come all the way through the tail. Remember, the spine is round. You have to come up and over the spine because if you don't, there'll be a line of meat that you miss. Remember, fish is very expensive. Once again, I'm clicking right on the bone. Okay, and straight out the belly. Okay, so there's the clean side, and then this knife, just follow the curve of the fish to clean for your presentation. And if you see, this fillet stops at this angle, so I'm just going to trim the tail, this little bit of tail, because that's just going to overcook and not be very palatable at the end. So now I have a really beautiful fillet. I have to pin bone, of course, in this case, and then probably take our skin off for presentation as well. One more knife. It's a boning knife. If you plan on doing any butchering, it's worth the investment. You know it's going to be a good quality knife, and we're going to break down half a chicken with it right now. So what I have here is a bone-in half chicken, still intact. Just going to remove a little bit of the skin here, just so I can see a little bit better what I'm doing. So here's the spine, wing, breast, leg, and thigh. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, since the chicken is half already and there's probably no wishbone, right, is I want to maintain one bone of the 3 separate bones that's in the wing. Okay, so here's the wing tip. Here's the center part, makes good buffalo wings. And this part I'm going to leave on to make this a bone-in breast. Okay, so I'm going to take the tip and I'm going to pull the tip back like this with my chicken on the board, flat. I'm going to hold my knife a little bit higher, choked up on it. And if you can see, there's just flesh here. Okay, that's just flesh. I want to follow that angle and pull back until I cut into the joint. Okay, then I'm going to pop the joint back. Okay, and then we have a beautifully exposed bone for presentation purposes. This is called a manchenet. Okay, and then you can take the chicken away from the spine, the breast away from the spine, and serve that on its own, which I'm going to do right now. So if you take a look here, this is just skin, leg and thigh. So I'm going to follow the skin around here and make sure not to cut into my oyster. My oyster's right here. So I follow this straight back until I reach the oyster. Cut through that. And this comes apart very easily. I'm going to save this for the second part. So here's your breast. You can leave this bone in, it doesn't matter, but if you're going to be presenting, actually I'm going to show you one more thing with shears. If you want to leave some of these bones in, but this is too big, just make sure your skin is all intact here, nice and covering, and then you take your shears and just cut out the spine. There you go. This is called an airline breast, a bone-in breast, lots of different names. French cut breast. I'm just going to trim this excess skin here because that would just end up burning when we cooked it anyway. Okay, and there's our bone-in breast. And we'll move on to the leg and the thigh. Here's the tail. I'm just going to trim that tail a little bit. Okay, and sometimes you'll have a need to remove the thigh bone. I'll show you how to do that with the 4-inch utility that comes with the Wusthof set. But in the meantime, I'm going to separate the leg from the thigh. And the way I do that is I pull the skin taut on the inside, and if you look closely here, you can see the line that you need to cut at in order to separate these into proper muscle groups. You can see the same thing on this side. Okay, so here's where the skin ends for my drumstick, and here's where the thigh begins. So I'm just going to follow, once again, you follow the natural curve, and the animal tells you where to cut. So it sliced through the cartilage like it was butter. Okay, so here's my drumstick. Okay, and then here's my thigh. I'm going to switch over to this 4.5-inch utility, and right in here there's a big bone. Okay, there's also, if you look here, there's another big bone here. Okay, so this, I'm going to remove that with the shears. This is part of the spine here, so I don't cut myself. This is when they slice these chickens, sometimes they put them through bandsaw and then they have splintery bones. I don't know if you can see that. There's splintery bones coming out, and I just don't want to cut myself on that. Okay, so I take this knife and I hold it up so I can utilize the tip a little bit better. And then if you spread this out a little bit, you'll be able to see there's a fat line here. That tells you where to cut. So you follow the fat line. Once again, don't cut too deep like when we were talking about the fish. If you make a mistake, you can't fix it. So I'm nice and close to the bone. And I follow the tip of the bone around. Remember, there's a big piece of cartilage right here that was holding the bone in place. So now I come to the second bone, which is right here, and if I remove this little piece here, you'll see there's a little line there. So you follow that around. Okay, and now I'm under the bone. So once I can touch my two fingers together, I'm in business here. Okay, so I'm utilizing this part to scrape down, making sure all the meat remains behind. And there we go, there's a joint. I can see the joint capsule. There it is, there's a joint capsule, and you can just pop it out. Okay, and then if you really wanted it truly boneless, you would remove the spine as well. So where's my oyster? Okay. Skin is intact. If I take that other bone out, you can stuff it, roll it, roast it,